There was nothing at first, but God had a vision of a world in which life could flourish. He created light and distinguished it from darkness on the first day. Then he created the sky, separating the oceans above and below. Then he created the earth, verdant, with trees and plants. And he molded the land and the oceans. To indicate time and seasons, he positioned the sun, moon, and stars in the sky. Then he made the sky full of birds and the sea full of fish. He created all creatures, from the tiniest bug to the most powerful beast, to live on earth on the sixth day. But with all that existence, nobody was left to reflect, ponder, or communicate with God. God therefore made the decision to create a new species of being with the capacity for thought, emotion, and free will. Someone who could love and understand, not just an animal. He created a human form out of dust from the earth. Then he gave it vitality. For the first time, the man opened his eyes and looked around. God gave him the name Adam, which translates to from the earth. God put Adam in Eden, a tranquil garden teeming with trees, rivers, and wildlife. Adam cared for the area, named the animals, and joyfully explored it. But as time went on, he started to sense that something was lacking. He was by himself. When God saw this, he declared, "Man cannot survive in solitude." He then went back to earth and created a new creature that was distinct yet on par with Adam. He gave her life in the same way that he had given Adam's. Lilith was her name. God told them, "You are equals," once she was created. Together, go across this garden. Take good care of it and one another. Grow, learn, and explore. You were both created of dust, and you will return to dust. Thus, neither is superior to the other. However, live side by side while you are alive. Adam and Lilith paid close attention to what God had to say. In addition to providing them with a place to dwell, he had also given them the garden to tend to, investigate, and comprehend. They were entrusted with Eden as its first guardians, not just welcomed there as guests. Thus, surrounded by animals that walked fearlessly next to them, they started their lives together. They discovered how to collaborate out of wonder rather than obligation. Adam would get up early to watch how the animals behaved. He observed the birds feeding their young, the wolves returning in small groups to sleep close to the trees, and the lions resting in the shade. The manner in which they move, there's always a reason for it. There is a rhythm to everything here. The owl waits before striking. The lion chases just when necessary. Lilith, on the other hand, was rarely stationary. Even silence has rhythm. Temperature shift from morning to dusk. Picked up stones to examine their shapes, and ran her hands over the bark of trees. Lilith moved confidently, but Adam was usually cautious. Even in the more secluded areas of the garden, she did not hesitate to go alone. Something inside her felt restless, a want to know what all of this meant. Lilith came back from a long walk one day while Adam sat under a fig tree, watching a herd of animals at the riverbank. Once more, you missed the northern edge. Beyond the big palms is a clearing that has a cinnamon bark scent to it. There, I saw animals and birds I had never heard of before, with fiery red feathers. You traveled so far by yourself. The wind and the birds were with me, so I wasn't alone. Even though he didn't always comprehend her bravery, Adam nevertheless respected it. Sometimes he liked things that were familiar. Lilith, however, became irritated by anything that was repeated too frequently. At night, she would lie on her back and gaze at the stars, attempting to track their gradual motions. I'm not sure what it is, but I sense that there's something more than all of this. They shared the garden, but they navigated it in different ways. The garden is perfect, but it can't be all there is. I want to see everything God has made, not just what's around me now. Adam took solace in routine and order. Change and discovery gave Lilith energy. Nevertheless, they spoke frequently, sometimes about dreams and other times about animal names. Do you believe that God has dreams? However, dreams don't stop at the garden gate. Yes, and I believe we are a part of that dream. They swam in the river when the air was hot, ate together under the shade of large trees, and rested when the sun went down. Perhaps one day we'll be permitted to see more. Lilith's intellect was active, even when she was sleeping. She was always asking inquiries. One tree grew taller than the other, and she wanted to know why. Why some birds built their houses on the grass, while others nested high. Why certain animals were attracted to firelight, while others were attracted to water. Have you ever questioned why God created so many things that we still don't fully comprehend? If not to use this mind, why give it to us? However, despite their disagreements, there was still harmony, at least for the time being. Perhaps to see if we'll ask him directly, or perhaps to test our patience. They both received the same breath and were created from the same earth. Despite their differing perspectives, they both had a deep affection for the garden. It was evident from the beginning of their stay in Eden that Lilith had a connection to nature that Adam had never experienced. Lilith made no effort to become an expert in the garden. She joined in. She was learning when she vine's curvature, a tree's bark peeling, or a butterfly's flight path before landing. Adam would frequently observe her return from these lengthy excursions, with her hands full of herbs or plants. I wait until it's ready to show me. Lilith would talk about what she had learned as they sat by the river in the evenings.
I believe they combat infection because today I discovered a patch of roots that emit a harsh fragrance when the air is heated. They seemed to know, for only the sick deer were attracted to them.
How do you recall all these things?
They stay with me on their own, as if they want to be used, and I don't try to.
She never thought of nature as something she could manipulate. She waited, she observed, and she comprehended. Her fingers were sensitive when tending to burns or scratches, and she grew proficient at combining bark and leaves to make salves. No one ever taught her this. Her teacher was the world itself.
波を舞い波、私はパイにもお前22の東方だないにすね。
Lilith once noticed movement in the tall grass while strolling along a peaceful path close to the garden's western boundary. On its side lay a big, strong, and obviously hurt lion. Its fur was tangled with blood close to the shoulder, and it had trouble breathing. Adam would have taken a back seat. Lilith, however, did not hesitate to kneel next to the creature.
There is no reason to be afraid of pain. There is something to comprehend. If I remain motionless long enough, I won't turn away. I can assist even the most untamed animals.
To clean the wound, she carried water from the nearby creek and soaked soft bark pieces in it. She then took a handful of crushed herbs, plants she had gathered days before, for an unidentified reason, out of her pouch. Whispering as she worked, she softly massaged the paste into the lion's shoulder. There was no lion's growl. It failed to run. As though it realized it was secure, it breathed slowly. Lilith told Adam about it later that evening, when the stars came out.
He never once flinched. Not because I'm strong, but because I didn't carry fear. I believe he trusted me.
You didn't even call me.
I didn't have to. The garden provided me with what I needed. The herbs, the stream, and the quiet. Everything was present.
Animals started searching for her after that day. On her shoulders, birds landed. Hurt animals came forward without reluctance. Even the most wary of animals would hover close to her path. Lilith never thought of animals as less than human. She didn't consider herself to be their savior or ruler. She viewed them as fellow beings, each possessing unique insight and a place in the universe. They then gave her a trusting response.
I'd rather not alter the garden. I feel that God intended for us to take care of it, not to reign over it, but to be a part of it without violating it.
There had been books. They wouldn't have been helpful to her. She learned from the aroma in the air before daybreak, from the way some plants leaned toward or away from her touch, and from the flight of birds. Only the trees on the north side are climbed by this vine. Perhaps it favors shade. I believe it follows the cold. I wouldn't have noticed. You see things I don't, and I see things you haven't yet searched for, which is why we are both here. However, after time, a change started to occur between Lilith and Adam. Their differences were innocuous at first. Adam frequently shared what he thought to be facts with assurance. Lilith listened, quiet and inquisitive, preferring peace even though she didn't always agree. But as time went on, Adam's speech started to seem more hierarchical rather than like they had a common goal. There's a reason I was made first, you know. Before you were even shaped, I was shown the garden and given the assignment of naming the animals. Yes, but the order matters. You were made first, but that does not mean you were made greater. You were made to be a helper, someone to walk with me, and someone to assist me. God gave me responsibility, to walk with you. The words hung between them like a wall just starting to rise, not behind you. Adam was still unaware of it. Lilith, however, did. Conversations that started as sharing and ended in confrontation occupied the next days. Adam thought that he was the center and that everything emanated from him. Lilith thought of the garden as a circle rather than a ladder. With you, why must everything be questioned? Things are in order. Someone has to take the lead. Then take the lead yourself. At night, the gap between them widened. I will not follow a path that was not mine to choose. They continued to talk, eat together, and sit close to one another. But something was shifting. The stars above appeared a little quieter, and the warmth between them was cooling. Lilith started to spend more time outside of Eden's center. Lilith strolled to the periphery of the garden, while Adam remained close to its center. She discovered life that did not demand anything of her there, close to the hills and the foggy rivers, and silence that did not pass judgment. She talked to herself more now, just enough for the wind to convey her words, not loud enough for others to hear. He talks about order, but it feels like a cage to me. No one, not Adam, not me, was born to serve. My eyes were created to see, not to bow, and my hands were made to heal, not to submit. One evening, Adam discovered her sitting by herself by the stream, her hands making designs in the mud, her feet in the water. You have been aloof. You have too, but in a different manner. You were created to be my friend, and I've been thinking about us. And one person leads, and another follows. And who chose you to take the lead? Did God do it? Or did you do it? It's not pride. It's just the way things are. In my opinion, the person who comes first bears the burden, the voice, the directive, then carry it by itself. Arguments started to happen frequently. Adam continued to love Lilith in his own way, but he was blind to the fact that his perception of her job was limiting her options. Lilith still had feelings for Adam, but she was unable to function in an environment where she was supposed to become smaller. I want peace too, but not at the expense of my voice. He wants peace, but only if it is peaceful submission. Even yet, she came back occasionally to tell stories of the areas of Eden Adam had never been to. Today, I noticed an owl flying close to the northern trees. It blinked twice before taking off. Why travel so far? Everything you need is right here. You're mistaken. I need the quiet instead. I need to discover meaning without being told what it should be. I need the unknown. You're making this more difficult than it has to be. Adam occasionally attempted to soften his position and go back to more innocent days. "No, I'm just refusing to make it smaller." He would inquire about the birds or bring her some fruit. Lilith, however, felt that his actions were motivated by a desire to maintain the status quo rather than by understanding. Lilith was not always upset. She continued to be polite to the trees, patient with animals, and silently delighted when a new flower bloomed. She retreated more, however, the more she was instructed who she ought to be. Why should I compromise my own harmony in order to conform to someone else's? The final time they sat together by the river before their actual separation, the conversation started quietly. If balance means I must be less, then it is not balance, it is control. Are you still of the opinion that we were destined to be together, but not in this way? Then how? You want unity, but only if I agree with you. Give yourself room to breathe and make your own decisions. That's stillness masquerading as peace, Adam. That's not unity. She stood, wiping the dirt from her hands. I won't stay where I'm not accepted for who I am. I won't suppress my voice to be heard, and I won't vanish to maintain peace. She also stopped going back to the same spots, even though she didn't depart that evening. Her spirit had relocated, but her body was still in Eden. Adam didn't search for her as much. He spoke less, and instead of laughter and exploration, the air between them now contained only recollections of what may have been. God had been silently observing. He observed the building 10 at last approached her. Lilith was standing close to the middle of Eden, behind a fruitless tree that she frequently went back to when she needed to be alone. She was encircled by God's presence. She was aware of his arrival. The garden was created harmoniously, Lilith. Adam was assigned a role and you were assigned one next to him. However, order has been disrupted. The resistance in your heart no longer conceals itself. Why do you withdraw from what has been bestowed upon you?
Because I didn't pick the chain that came with what was handed to me.
You weren't created to rule or be controlled. You were made to walk beside Adam. But someone has to take the lead, and someone has to follow.
Why is it the case? Even though you created us both from the soil and gave us breath, you still want me to take a back seat. I can't silence the voice you put inside of me.
Then I give you an option. You can stay, but in order to stay in Eden, you have to accept Adam's position as the garden's ruler. You are free to depart if you are unable to accept this directive, which is not punishment. Lilith's eyes were closed. She had anticipated this. As though the garden had already sensed the choice growing inside of her, she had sensed it in the way the trees no longer swung as she passed by, and in the silence that grew, even in nature itself.
What if I go?
Your path will then be your own, but it will be outside of Eden, and you won't be living under the garden's protection anymore. There will be no solace, just freedom, and what you choose to make of it when you confront the outside world, the wilderness, and the unknown.
Then I decide to leave.
God didn't answer right away. As though taken aback, the garden itself appeared to pause. Perhaps assuming that she would be afraid of the outer world and that Eden's beauty would be sufficient to keep her, he had offered her the option. Lilith, however, had never been one to stay out of fear. She took a step forward. She gazed up at the sky instead of the garden. Then something occurred. Her back arched in release rather than anguish. Something inside of her stirred, not from heaven or the exterior, but from within. She started to grow wings from within. Like the night before the first light, they were black and profound. At first, they moved slowly, as though they had just woken up. She was observed by God. He didn't stop her. His hand did not come up. She had made the decision once he had given it to her.
All okay.
I don't get angry, but I won't stay where I have to bow to be welcomed. I wasn't created to kneel. She stretched her wings without saying anything else, as if they had always been hers. She loved herself too much. She was not called back by the garden. Adam didn't go after her. Until the green turned to sand, Lilith flew. She landed there, outside the world that was molded by divine order. The desert was huge, desolate, and dry. But it wasn't dead to her. It was truthful. No one names the stones here, and no one directs the wind where to blow. This is truth, not consolation. But no one asks me to be less so they can be more. And I can construct from reality. Days went by, or evenings. Unlike in Eden, time did not flow in the desert. She had no river to cool her lips or tree to shade her. She didn't falter though. She took refuge in the rocks. She addressed the stars. As she had done in the garden, she collected dried herbs and combined them. I have the sky and the flames in my hands, so I'm not alone. The Red Sea glistened in the distance. I remember Eden, and I know that I left it on my own 2 feet. For Lilith, it was a place of calm, but later tales would describe tumult and drowning. She was not judged by the sea. Who led and who followed was not questioned. It just moved, without asking permission. Some people claim that I chose exile, but I actually chose freedom, even though it came at a hefty cost, not more than my soul. Time in the desert started to inflict scars that no wind could remove. Even though Lilith had made her decision without hesitation, and her heart had not second-guessed it, there had been a lot of movement in the early days. But eventually, everything around her became motionless. Something heavier than sand gathered inside her during that silence. I have freedom because I asked for it, but freedom does not equate to serenity. It's weight, too. The weight of being by yourself. The weight of hearing only your own voice. Her mind would occasionally stray back to Eden. She recalled the sound of the river at sunset, the aroma of the fig trees, and the cadence of Adam's footsteps next to hers. There are moments when I recall his face, not how he gazed at me, but rather how he avoided it, how he stared beyond me even when I was standing next to him. I called it absence, and he called it order. She became thinner. The sun had darkened her skin. Wind and dust had knotted her hair. Her spirit, however, did not wane. Gathering wood, boiling water, and caring for the little shelter she had constructed out of stone and dry thoughts. I'm not terrified, I believe, because there is something in the dark that knows my name. I believe it has been anticipating my arrival. Demon-like forms emerged one night while the wind blew aimlessly. They were shape-shifting creatures with wings and horns. Lilith remained motionless. That's all for today. We'll meet again tomorrow. Remember to subscribe and leave your comments so we can develop further. We are Touch of Mystery. See you again. At first, she remained silent. She only looked at them, and they looked at her. They exchanged something that didn't require words. She approached them, stood slowly, and spoke. You don't obey orders, and you live free. I've looked for that. I see now that I wasn't alone. Something inside her woke up in their company. It was an internal power. Her movements were deliberate. She inhaled deeply, Lilith gave birth that night. She had hundreds of demonic children after mating with demons. Those descendants had powerful limbs, wings, and sharp voices. They crawled next to her, circled her, and gave her sympathetic looks. They weren't designed to comply. They were created. You are free just as I am. You were born voluntarily, not under duress. You don't belong to anyone. They moved noisily and energetically through the night. A few took to the air. A few of them crawled. The wind had never heard some of their laughter. They were wild and alive, forming a circle around her, and Lilith stood in the center. Many things started to change in Eden after Lilith left. What was once perfectly balanced started to become unbalanced. The garden's rhythm had changed, but neither its color nor its vitality had diminished. There was only one voice now, whereas there used to be two that walked, spoke, and named the world together. Adam stayed. He took the same roots, the same rivers he drank from, the same trees he touched. However, nothing reacted as it once did. Once attracted to the peace of Eden, the animals no longer approached as closely. The birds took to the skies. Now, even the breeze that used to carry the aromas of fruit and blossoming flowers felt motionless. Adam became aware of it gradually. He initially carried on with his work as usual. He gave new animals names. He examined new plants. Thinking the world listened, he spoke out loud to it. But as the days went by, his voice sounded smaller, and the silence grew deeper. As though to fill the void that had formed around him, he started talking more to himself. She used to ask too many questions and talk too much. I always want to learn more, travel farther, and take longer walks. Now that I'm alone, everything is quiet. There was no one left to argue with him, no one to oppose him. He had no one to remind him that there were other options besides his own. He initially believed he liked it this way. However, the quiet was not tranquility, it was void. Adam continued to hold out hope that Lilith would come back in the early days following her departure. Trees. However, the days went by. Weeks later, Lilith also didn't come back. He watched the water while sitting by the stream, where they used to rest together. She had laughed, he recalled. He recalled how she gently caressed the plants and how she paid more attention than she said. She never waited for permission to explore, he recalled. She never feared anything, not God, not me, and not the future. She moved as though she were her own. He recalled their fights. He had thought he was correct. He had been given that leadership. She was supposed to follow. He started to question what that leadership had really meant, now that there was no one left to follow him. Adam called out to God one evening as he made his way to the middle of the garden. There was a hint of bewilderment and regret in his voice. I lost the woman you gave me. I followed your instructions and named, and she left me alone. I tended. I did as I was told. A long pause ensued. Then he spoke once more. But why does Eden feel incomplete now? If it is flawless, without her here, why does everything seem smaller? God heard. He didn't respond right away. He listened until Adam's voice became quiet. She was challenging to me and didn't want to follow. However, the animals listened to her words. The trees appeared to slant when she walked, and the garden seemed larger with her presence. After a while, Adam ceased speaking. The words felt heavier than before, not because he had nothing more to say. He spent many days sitting in the same spot. He ate the fruit without saying a word. He strolled through the garden, but he couldn't find anything new to name. He was reminded of her by everything. It was all a reminder of what was gone. God came back to him. "You questioned me about her departure." Adam's face turned slightly, but the question is not why she left, but rather why she was unable to stay. She refused to be less than who she was, and that is not disobedience. Because she refused the order, that's the reality, Adam said, lowering his head. Something he had never understood before now made sense to him. She wasn't mine. Rather, she was made to walk with me, rather than to follow me. Adam remained silent after that, and when she could not, she chose to walk alone. There was silence in the garden. The silence was different now, though. Something had to be done, to provide a way forward, not to reverse the past. God watched the man he had created out of dust and breath from above the garden. He glanced past Eden to the world. Is a clear reason why these angels were selected. Their task was to deliver God's command to Lilith and make sure his will was carried out. God gave them a clear, unambiguous explanation of everything. "Go see Lilith. I give you words. Speak them. She needs to go back to Eden. Tell her. Her spot is still available. Everything will be back to normal if she agrees. She will be carried back by you if she doesn't want to. Don't wait. Take decisive action." The angels nodded their heads in agreement. They departed from the higher realms and started to descend through the layers of heaven, fully aware of their mission. They traveled across fields of light, through skies full of divine order, and arrived at the edge where creation and the edge meet. They were going to the Red Sea, where Lilith had made her home. The angels saw her when they arrived at the shore. She was standing close to the waves on a flat rock. She didn't look surprised. Long before they had set foot on the ground, she had sensed their presence. Sinoi was the first to move forward. He spoke in a firm but courteous tone. "Lilith, the voice of God is with us. We bring you his words." Lilith did not move. She took her time, examining each one, identifying their roles and names. "I recognize you, and I understand why you're here. God gives you the opportunity to come back. You're still standing next to Adam. Once more, you are welcome in Eden. The order may be complete." Lilith did not interrupt as she listened. Her face, however, did not waver. "You can decide right now. Come back with us. All of that can go on." She briefly turned her gaze to the sea before turning it back to them. "I had a reason for leaving Eden. There, I was subject to rules that did not apply to me. I requested to be treated equally. However, I wasn't. I was given that option, and I took it. I don't want to take it back." After a brief pause, the angels answered. Their message was powerful. They weren't just there to make an offer. They had also arrived to take action. "You received a command from God. You're told to come back. It's more than just a message. It's a responsibility. When God created me, he granted me freedom. I was formed by him from the same soil as Adam. He gave me a voice, a mind, because it's mine." The angels moved toward us. The atmosphere around them shifted. The weight of their mission caused the sea to grow a little darker. Lilith, however, did not move. She looked up at them once more. "I'll give you something in exchange, to foster understanding, not to haggle." The angels hesitated. "Talk. People will tell stories about me. My name will be associated with myths, warnings, and fear. From exile, my children will be born. I'll bring them up in an unprotected world. That's okay with me. I accept that 100 of them will fall every day. I pay that price for the life I have chosen." She spoke without trembling. "Let there be a sign, though. Allow a protective mark to appear. I will turn away if I see the names of Sonoy, Sansonoy, and Samongoloth written on a house, a child's bed, or an amulet. I'll respect that sign. If your names are around, I won't do any harm." The angels were silent as they stood. They didn't have to talk to each other. Her words were strong because they were true. They were aware of her clarity. "We will comply with your request. You will be protected from those who bear our names. The mark will be that. That God will receive your response. After that, it is finished." Her wings were brushed by the slight lift of the wind. She left the sea behind and went back to the land she had selected. The angels turned and rose from the shore after watching her leave. They carried her response back to the higher realms with their wings spread wide. They didn't talk during their flight. They didn't wonder what had occurred. They had achieved their goal. Once again, Lilith had made her decision without hesitation or fear. Their report did not come as a surprise to God. He had known her heart, but he had also given her an order. The same strength she had displayed from the start was evident in her choice. She remained in exile, but not as a punishment. Because she stuck to the truth she had selected, it went on. The three angels' names started to appear on scrolls and charms after that day. They were inscribed on walls and carved into wood. Believing in the power of the agreement, people put them next to beds and cradles. In keeping with her promise, Lilith avoided those locations. She continued to travel through a world shaped by freedom rather than obedience, far from Eden, among the Red Sea winds. God observed Adam's movements in the garden. He no longer thought Lilith would come back. He walked more slowly every day, as though the garden had expanded in conflict. Her breath was given by God, and he also gave her presence. Adam woke up to find her at his side, not with resistance, but with recognition, her eyes locked with his. She didn't say anything first. She waited. Adam's words caused her face to open in a composed manner. She's of me. She is a physical component of me. She didn't hesitate when he reached for her hand. She walked next to him, listened to what he had to say, and grinned when he called her by name. Because she was descended from men, he called her a woman. She would eventually be known as Eve. Regarding Lilith, she didn't inquire. She was unaware of the woman who had gone before her. She accepted the man who led her through the garden and the garden itself as it was. She became familiar with the names of flowers and trees. As Adam told her stories, she sat by the river and laughed. She went about her days in a calm routine. The Lilith watched from outside Eden. She watched as they strolled between the trees. She observed how Eve touched Adam's shoulder. She saw how she always turned to face him when she spoke, tilting her head. Lilith did not look on in rage. She silently watched, examining every second as though it were a query. She goes where he goes. Through his voice, she hears the world. Although her hands move gracefully, they lack self-direction. She still abides by his wishes because she was formed from his body. Lilith recalled the feeling of confinement that had pressed against her chest rather than the colors or sounds of the garden. She recalled how her questions remained unanswered and how her thoughts had nowhere to rest. Eve didn't seem to have any of that. Though there was no fire, there was peace. She lives comfortably, but she is unaware of the price. She is unaware that she was molded by him rather than by his side. She does not understand what it means to stand because she has never walked by herself. Adam grinned once more. His waiting for the sound of wings in the sky had stopped. He no longer sat quietly by the trees. His words came back to him, with Eve by his side. Eve listened carefully as he spoke with ease. Together, they chuckled. Occasionally, they sang, and the garden responded once more, not as softly as before. Lilith took a step toward Eden's edge. Her path was unobstructed by the trees. She was unaffected by the wind. She observed how Eve's fingers brushed the grass as she lay with her eyes closed beneath the tree of knowledge. Adam was standing close by, harvesting fruit. They loved her, but they had no other option. She cannot develop if she doesn't ask. She cannot know herself if she is unable to make a decision. The sky grew dimmer. The sun sank below the garden's rim. Adam and Eve made their way to the tree's cover. They closed their eyes and lay next to each other. Lilith moved across the long grass. As she moved into the tree of knowledge's shade, her body changed. As a whole, I strolled through this garden. I chose to leave it. That was truth, but they dubbed it rebellion. She now closes her eyes and walks it with her hands open. The price of being made for someone else is unknown to her yet. Lilith gave her body permission to change. Slowly, deliberately, she lost her former form. Her body grew more fluid, smaller, and lower to the ground. She transformed into a serpent in the area between the roots and the branches. She felt more connected to the ground and unrecognizable because of this shape. It gave her the freedom to move at will. She controlled her ascent up the tree. She encircled the lower limb with her body. She located a fruit that was within reach among the hanging fruit. The fruit was heavy and full, containing the knowledge she had previously carried by herself. She peered down from her perch on the branch at Eve, who was dozing in the grass beneath the tree. Unaware, Eve's presence stayed serene. Never before had she inquired about the tree. Why it mattered had never been explained to her. She had never been asked to make her own decisions, and everything that was around her had been provided without question. Eve had never seen the path that Lilith had come to reveal. She would give this woman an opportunity to make her own decision. At one point, Lilith had uttered the name of God and turned to leave. She would now say nothing at all and let someone else make the decision. The end of paradise was not here. It was the dawn of consciousness. The human story would never be the same after that.